Hi and welcome to your third School Frog tutorial on John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. Today we're going to look at our first impressions of one of the minor characters, Candy. Now minor characters are important, so don't overlook them because they can actually give you an insight into what's going on with the main characters as well as some of the sort of themes in the story. So let's look at a first description of Candy. He's described as a tall, stoop-shouldered man came in. He was dressed in blue jeans and carried a big push broom. He pointed with his right arm, and out of the sleeve came a round stick-like wrist, but no hand. Okay, so let's do this the way we did the other two, and just break it down into some small, sort of short key phrases and words. So the first thing is that he's described as being tall and stoop-shouldered. So this suggests that Candy used to be big and strong, but stoop-shouldered suggests that he's no longer as fit and able as he used to be. So in a way, Candy could represent a vision of what life has in store for the other men in the ranch when they get older. So the second thing is that he was dressed in blue jeans. Now, Candy's clothes are plain and functional. There's nothing special about the way he looks. He is just an ordinary man. I would generally avoid saying things like a character's just an ordinary guy because there are more interesting things to say generally about the characters. But for Candy, it is important that we see this, that really his life hasn't progressed since he was a younger man. He's just, he's just doing this, wearing the same kind of clothes and doing the same type of work in a broad sense that he did when he was younger, although obviously he's not in the same job because of his age and he's not as able as he used to be. So that takes us on to the next part, which is that he carried a big push broom. Now, this is mentioned a couple of times in Candy's description, and it's mentioned a couple of times in order to emphasize his role. He works on a ranch, but he doesn't do the usual kind of ranch work that the younger guys do. He's the swamper, which means that he's like a cleaner, an odd job man. He just kind of cleans up after everybody else. So his status on the ranch is pretty low. Okay, none of the men really have a particularly high status apart from maybe the boss's son, and Slim, who we'll look at a little bit later on. But when we talked about George and Lenny, they're quite insignificant in terms of people in the world. Obviously, as characters, they're very significant. But in terms of their jobs, they're not important. But Candy is even lower than them, and that's why this big push broom is mentioned a couple of times. Okay, and the final thing to mention about Candy is that he doesn't have a hand. Instead, a round stick-like wrist, but no hand. So Candy's lost one of his hands, and he'd actually, ironically, lost it working. Now, this reinforces the idea that Candy is no longer the man that he used to be. He can't do the type of ranch work that he used to do, and he's kind of been demoted to just cleaning up after everyone else. Now, the reason that Candy's important is that he represents what will eventually happen to the men on the ranch. Now, we're not saying that they're all going to lose their hands, but he represents the opposite of the idea of the American dream. So instead of working to make their lives better, they will just simply work until they can't work anymore. And actually, in Candy's case, his work has made his life worse. So working hard instead of working hard to achieve some wonderful dream or goal, Candy, by working, has actually made his life worse because he can't do the same type of work that he used to do. Okay, so ironically, you could say it was his job that left him without a hand and destroyed any dreams that he might have. Now, obviously, later on in the story, we see Candy sort of rebuilding his dreams or starting to rebuild his dreams. But we will talk about that in a later tutorial. Okay, so that's it for Candy. So don't forget that you can buy the worksheet resources in PDF format from lulu.com/spotlight /schoolfrog. They only cost a couple of pounds or a couple of dollars depending on where you are in the world. We also have a blog at schoolfrog.blogspot.co.uk. So if you want to keep up to date with what we're up to, you can have a look on there. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and next tutorial we're going to look at some more characters. Okay, see you next time.